Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something that, well, it might surprise you.
Uh-huh.
It's this really intricate web of connections linking tech giants Apple, Google, and Samsung.
Yeah.
On the surface, you see them as, fierce rivals, always battling for market share, for your attention.
Right. That's the story we usually get.
But if you dig just a little deeper, you find this fascinating landscape, partnerships driving their businesses in ways you probably wouldn't expect.
Exactly. That competitive narrative, it really only tells part of the story.
Yeah.
Beneath all that rivalry lie these crucial, often, mutually beneficial relationships.
Mhm.
Understanding these connections, it reveals quite a lot about these strategic priorities and, frankly, the economic realities shaping the tech world.
And that's what we're here to do today. We've got an article, Apple, Google, and Samsung's weird relationship explained, sort of as our guide.
Yeah, it lays it out pretty well.
We're going to unpack these complexities and see just how much these companies actually rely on each other and prepare for some surprising connections, like this one.
Okay.
Back in 2017, it's estimated that Samsung's revenue from just supplying display panels for Apple's iPhone X
Right, the OLEDs.
actually exceeded
Yeah.
what they made from launching their own flagship phone, the Galaxy S8.
Wow. Yeah, let that sink in. That's huge.
It really is.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's unpack this Apple-Samsung dynamic first.
That 2017 example is like the perfect starting point. You've got two of the absolute biggest smartphone competitors.
Head to head.
Yet one is a absolutely critical supplier to the other. Apple really relies on Samsung for those high-end OLED displays.
Right.
And yeah, sure, there are other display manufacturers out there, but Samsung's scale and the quality they can consistently deliver at that massive volume, well, it's pretty much unmatched.
Absolutely. We're talking potentially hundreds of millions of these advanced OLED panels for just one iPhone model.
Yeah.
So it really begs the question, why wouldn't Samsung use this? Use it to their advantage? Why not squeeze Apple on price or maybe even limit supply to boost their own Galaxy sales?
That's the fascinating part, isn't it? The calculation here, most likely, is about overall profit.
Okay.
The sheer volume of Apple's orders, it provides Samsung with this massive and, importantly, relatively stable revenue stream.
Steady income.
Exactly. Disrupting that, even if you hope to sell a few more Galaxy phones, it could actually be riskier and maybe ultimately less profitable.
Oh.
It's a perfect illustration of what people often call co-opetition.
Co-opetition, right. Competitors cooperating.
Yeah, competitors in one area, like smartphones, cooperating in another, like component supply, all for mutual economic gain.
So they're kind of locked in this dance.
Yeah.
Their rivalry maybe fuels innovation, pushes them forward.
Sure.
But these background partnerships ensure, well, substantial profits for both sides.
Yeah.
But is this situation stable? I mean, long term. The article hinted the ground might be shifting a bit.
That's right. Apple is reportedly investing heavily in developing micro-LED display technology.
Micro-LED, okay.
This is pretty significant because, it's similar to their move towards making their own silicon chips for Macs.
Right, taking it in-house.
Yeah, it suggests the strategic drive to control more of their own critical components supply chain and, crucially, reduce their reliance on a key competitor like Samsung.
So if Apple can actually pull that off, make that transition to micro-LEDs successfully.
Well, it could indeed have a pretty significant impact on Samsung's display business. That's a big chunk of revenue.
Interesting. So a relationship built on a vital component could eventually lead them down different paths.
Okay, let's switch gears now. Another really fascinating link, this time between Apple and Google.
Oh, yes.
And this one involves a truly staggering figure. We're talking somewhere around $20 billion annually.
Yeah, $20 billion. That's the estimated amount Google pays Apple each year.
Just to be the default.
Just to be the default search engine in Safari on iPhones, iPads, Macs.
Think about the implications of that. For countless iPhone users, their entire search journey, it just begins and ends with Google. Why? Because it's the pre-selected option.
It's just there.
That kind of prime digital real estate, well, it's incredibly valuable.
Absolutely huge for Google, obviously. It grants them access to this enormous volume of search queries right from the start, which, just reinforces their dominance in the search market.
Definitely.
But from Apple's perspective, I mean, besides that massive pile of cash, what's the strategic win there?
Well, for Apple, it's just a remarkably efficient revenue stream, almost pure profit. It requires relatively little direct effort on their part, and it significantly boosts their bottom line, their financial performance.
Okay, makes sense. But an arrangement that big,
Mm-hmm.
it's bound to attract some attention, right?
You're absolutely right. And it has. Antitrust authorities like the U.S. Justice Department, they've been examining this deal pretty closely.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
They're raising concerns about whether it unfairly stifles competition in the search market and basically reinforces Google's monopoly.
Which is why, perhaps, both companies tend to kind of downplay the significance of this deal when they're in legal proceedings.
Exactly. And what's really revealing is when you dig into some of the internal communications that have surfaced through those legal processes.
Oh.
Apparently, within Google itself, the prospect, just the idea of Apple developing its own search engine, that was considered a code red scenario.
Code red, seriously.
Seriously, a critical existential threat to their core business. That really underscores just how much value Google places on keeping that default spot on Apple devices.
Wow, code red. That paints a very clear picture of the stakes involved here. So, okay, let's play this out. Let's imagine a scenario. What if Google, for whatever reason, decided to stop making those massive payments to Apple? What happens then? What might the fallout be?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? It opens up several possibilities, really.
Like what?
Well, one is that user behavior might not actually change all that dramatically.
Really? Even without the default?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Many iPhone users are just so accustomed to using Google Search. It's habit. They might just continue using it even if it wasn't the default setting anymore.
Okay, inertia is powerful. What else?
Another possibility is that Apple could then choose a different default search provider. Maybe someone like Microsoft's Bing gets a huge boost.
Or even something newer.
Or even, perhaps, an AI-powered search engine, like maybe ChatGPT or something similar, that could significantly reshape the search landscape, drive users towards AI answers.
Interesting. Or, there's a third option.
Or the scenario Google clearly fears the most. Apple might finally decide, okay, let's do this and invest in launching its very own search engine.
Directly challenging Google.
Directly challenging Google's long-held dominance, especially in mobile search. That would be a monumental shift in the tech world. Absolutely huge.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Apple, Samsung, Apple, Google.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to the third pairing in this triangle, Google and Samsung, specifically within the huge Android ecosystem.
Right. And this partnership has its own unique dynamics, its own points of interdependence. It's quite different again.
It is, and here's where it gets really interesting to me. Google, the company that makes Android, the company with its own Pixel phones, sometimes uses Samsung devices. The article mentioned the Galaxy S24 Ultra, specifically to showcase new Android features, even during their own product announcements.
Yeah.
It seems a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? Like Ford showing off a new engine feature using a Chevy truck.
Huh. Yeah, on the surface it might seem that way. A little odd.
Right.
However, it actually speaks volumes about the deep level of collaboration between them and, maybe more importantly, a recognition of their respective strengths within the Android world.
How's?
Well, while they both obviously make and sell their own smartphone lines, let's be real. Samsung is by far the dominant player in terms of Android device shipments. Globally, it's not even close.
Absolutely. Their market share dwarfs Pixels.
Right. So for Google, if they want to get their latest Android innovations, their newest software features, into the hands of a massive user base really quickly,
Partnering with Samsung is the way to go.
it's a highly effective strategy. Samsung's sheer volume of devices acts as this incredibly powerful distribution channel for Google's software and services.
Makes sense. A massive installed base ready to go.
Precisely. And this collaboration, it goes beyond just, showing off software on stage.
Yeah.
We see it in actual co-development of features.
Like what?
Well, for example, that circle-to-search functionality. That launched simultaneously on both the Samsung Galaxy S24 and the Google Pixel 8.
Ah, right. I remember that.
And we can't forget Wear OS 3, the smartwatch operating system. That was basically a joint effort co-developed between Google and Samsung to revitalize Android wearables.
Okay, so Google gets distribution and collaboration. But it's not just Google leveraging Samsung's hardware reach, is it? Samsung must gain significantly from this partnership, too.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely a two-way street. Google pays Samsung, reportedly substantial sums of money,
More money changing hands.
to pre-install their services, like Gemini AI, for instance, on Samsung devices.
Got it.
So again, it's this mutually beneficial arrangement. Samsung generates significant revenue from these deals, and Google ensures its ecosystem, search, maps, AI, everything has prime placement on a massive number of devices, reaching a far, far broader audience than their own Pixel line could ever achieve on its own. especially in markets like, say, North America, where Samsung outsells Pixel maybe 5-1.
Wow, 5-1. Okay. So looking at these three key pairings, Apple Samsung, Apple Google, Google Samsung, a really clear pattern starts to emerge, doesn't it?
It does.
Intense competition is definitely there on the surface. But underneath, there's this deep, deep interdependence. It's not just a simple story of rivals fighting tooth and nail for supremacy.
Exactly. I think the overarching takeaway here, the big picture, is really one of, well, mutually assured profitability.
Mutually assured profitability. I like that.
Think about it. Apple needs Samsung's cutting-edge display technology, at least for now. Google absolutely relies on that default search slot on Apple's massive iPhone user base.
Yeah, the $20 billion proves that.
Samsung benefits hugely from Google's Android platform itself, plus those substantial payments for pre-installing Google services. And then Google, in turn, needs Samsung's vast device distribution network to extend the reach of its entire ecosystem.
So each one needs something critical from at least one of the others.
Precisely. It's almost like this high-stakes strategic alliance, a very delicate balance, where actually disrupting these lucrative partnerships, well, it could have significant negative consequences for everyone involved.
Yeah, rocking the boat could sink everyone.
Kind of. They're all playing this really complex game of co-opetition, trying to maximize their own interests within this intricate web they've all helped build.
It's like a modern Cold War, but for tech giants, maybe, where outright conflict is avoided because the fallout would be too damaging.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually. Competition exists, it drives them, but they carefully avoid disrupting those core profitable partnerships.
So the next time you see, I don't know, a Samsung ad taking a jab at the iPhone's camera, or you hear about the latest Pixel phone challenging the newest Galaxy,
Yeah.
it's worth remembering these deeper connections humming away in the background. These companies are simultaneously competing fiercely, yes, but also relying on each other in really fundamental ways.
Driven by core economic imperatives. It's business.
This has been a really, really insightful deep dive into this interconnected world of Apple, Google, and Samsung. It definitely underscores that the tech landscape is just far more nuanced, maybe more collaborative in weird ways than that surface-level competition might lead you to believe.
Absolutely. And it leaves us and you listening with a pretty crucial question to consider, I think. How might these underlying partnerships, this whole framework of mutually assured profitability, how might that ultimately shape the future of technology and the choices available to us, as consumers? What are the long-term implications of these deep yet often almost invisible relationships? How does it affect innovation, your everyday tech experience?
Yeah, definitely something to think about long after this conversation ends. What does it mean for what comes next?